Were you ever curious about the history of the Stone Arch Bridge in Minneapolis? Let's take a closer look at it. The explorer, Jonathan Carver, visited St. Anthony Falls in 1766, 10 years before the Declaration of Independence. In his journal, Carver noted a small island below the falls, covered with oak trees. These trees were full of eagle nests. Carver figured the eagles prospered on the island because they were safe from predators, and there was a constant supply of food from animals and fish that were dashed to pieces by the falls. Between 1766 and 1887, the location of the falls changed due to erosion of the softer rock. The estimated location of the falls in 1766 is shown by a red line on the map. By 1887, the location of the falls had eroded back to the second red line. The cities of St. Anthony on the east side of the Mississippi River and Minneapolis on the west side prospered using water power from these falls. Minneapolis had 19 railroads that sent out over 100 passenger trains daily, and its mills produced enough flour in one day to fill a train a mile long. In the early 1880s, St. Paul and Minneapolis experienced explosive growth. St. Paul built a huge Union Depot in 1881 to house all the railroads coming into town. James J. Hill of the St. Paul, Minneapolis and Manitoba Railroad was trying to decide how to link all the railroads coming into Minneapolis, and on top of that to link them with St. Paul. In 1880, Hill was still a relatively young man of 42 years of age. Hill decided to construct a Union Depot in Minneapolis and connect it with the St. Paul Union Depot with a new railroad bridge. This was no easy task. He had to obtain rights of way through two increasingly congested cities. The civil engineer Hill selected to design the bridge was 50-year-old Colonel Charles C. Smith. The initial plan was to build an iron bridge upstream of the falls. However, Hill and Smith finally settled on a stone arch bridge located below the falls. There were several reasons to locate the bridge below the falls. First, this option would tie in much easier with the existing railroad lines in the area. In addition, it was thought there would be less danger from huge chunks of river ice. The foundation would be sturdier, and passengers would get a much better view of the falls. There were several reasons for selecting stone over iron. Trains could run as fast on stone bridges as they could on regular ground. Also, the stone would last much longer. Contractors were allowed to bid on the bridge project until December 1, 1881. However, the project would require a special contractor, since the size of the project was enormous. The bridge would be about 4/10 of a mile long. That's about 6 football fields in length. It was designed to be 65 feet above water level and 28 feet wide to accommodate 2 sets of tracks. The bridge would be composed of 23 arches. The longest would be 100 feet across, and the shortest would be 40 feet across. However, most of the arches would be 80 feet across. Finally, it would also require a 6-degree curve on the west side, which would take skilled stonemasons to construct. The contract was awarded to Edward Dara and Michael Haviland of Painesville, Ohio, who were said to have extensive experience in building bridges. Dara and Haviland would part ways a few months into the job, with Dara staying on. Surveying started in late January 1882. There was an accelerated timetable with the job, which would require 500 to 1,000 men working around the clock. In order to work at night, electric lights were mounted on towers along the work site. Commercially available electric lights were a very recent invention. Stone for bridge material was another immediate need. Dara and Haviland turned to Thomas Salpaugh to help with this. A good portion of the limestone would be quarried at the bridge site on the east bank of the Mississippi. However, granite was also required. A contract was made with John T. Young and Matthias Breen of St. Paul for granite from their Watab, Minnesota quarry. Thomas Salpaugh also set up a quarry site at Watab. Electric lights were also mounted on towers at these quarries to allow day and night work. In building the arches of the bridge, different courses of stone were used. In the base of the piers, a course of limestone came first, which was most likely from the on-site quarry. Next came a layer of granite, which was used up to the springing line. The granite came from Watab, near Sauk Rapids, Minnesota. Magnesian limestone was used above the springing line, coming from Kasota and Mankato in Minnesota, and from Stone City, Iowa. The filling material was also the on-site blue limestone. For the capstones and finishes, marble from Bridgeport, Wisconsin was used. Each pier location had to be excavated to reach the hard rock below. Most of this work involved men digging by hand. This process was easier where there was less water. The process was hardest in the main stream of the river and along the west side of the dam. Although the falls were powerful, the water in the river did not exceed 12 feet in depth. Caissons were used to build the piers in these spots. Caissons kept most of the water out of the pier area, and steam-powered pumps kept any leaking water out. Some of the caissons were 32 feet long by 15 feet wide, made up of 4-foot wide sections of quarter-inch thick iron, driven 10 feet into the bedrock. Once the piers were constructed, the arches were built. To complete the arches, carpenters constructed wooden frame arches called centers. The stones were laid on top of the centers until the keystone was inserted, which enabled the arch to stand alone. In a special ceremony on November 4, 1882, the first keystone was dropped perfectly into its place on the east side of the bridge. A little over a year later, on November 22, 1883, the first engine crossed the bridge, carrying railroad men James J. Hill, Allen Manville, Colonel Charles C. Smith, and several others. After crossing, the men then walked back to the center of the bridge, while the engine was driven past them at 20 miles an hour. The men detected no trembling of the bridge, showing that the track had a firm foundation. The bridge was then fenced up, awaiting the completion of the Minneapolis Union Depot. Although the depot was not entirely completed at the time, the Stone Arch Bridge opened for business on September 1, 1884. Here are a few other interesting facts about the Stone Arch Bridge. On September 10, 1884, James J. Hill was presented with a silver platter by the businessmen of Minneapolis in recognition of his great work for the city. The plaque was made by Tiffany & Company of New York City and featured the Stone Arch Bridge in the center. The platter cost around $8,000 in 1884, or about $206,000 today. When the bridge was first planned, it was not known if the Minneapolis Mill Company would allow an arch to be constructed in front of their property. Once this permission was obtained, that arch had the honor of bearing upon its keystone the only inscription on the bridge, the figures 1883. Hill admitted he was proud of the bridge, saying he, Allen Manville, and Colonel Charles C. Smith put their names on a piece of granite on the inside of the curve. He went on to say, "I do feel that this structure will be here when we are all gone, and one day they will ask, as they once did before, what possessed them to put the bridge below the falls?" Edward Dara, the bridge contractor, died January 1, 1883, in the middle of the construction. His leadership and talent were well noted by his men. Colonel Charles C. Smith resigned from engineering work on January 1, 1885. The Minneapolis Stone Arch Bridge was said to be his crowning achievement. He died in Ohio on April 17, 1889. James J. Hill would live until May 29, 1916, becoming one of the wealthiest men in America. That concludes this video. For additional historical or brick-related information, check out my websites at mnbricks.com and chaskabrick.com. Thanks for watching.